You are listening to The Joyce Aldrich Show from Toronto, Canada. Paranormal and UFO edition. Yes, we call them UFOs.
Might be Venus or some unknown light, hovering a bit too low tonight. The lightning sheet, lightning with a balloon, or something strange out of a five-side cartoon. Okay, welcome to this edition of the Joyce Aldrich Show, and I got a great guest in tonight. If you have ever heard about the Knights of the Templar, or have had an NDE, or are on your own personal search, everyone has a mission. And this gal, she's got a great mission, and she is Dr. Kathleen Ball. She's a researcher, she's a traveler, an explorer of ancient sites, and she's full of all kinds of interestings. And we're going to be exploring that tonight, going for a deep dive, and maybe we're going to be taking a very deep dive into a cave that she discovered. So we're going to be talking about that a little bit later in the show. But I'd like to welcome Kathleen Ball to the Joyce Aldrich Show. So happy to have you here.
Hi, Joyce. Yeah, it's great to be here. I'm looking forward to our chat.
Yeah, me too. There's just so much to talk about. So you know what? There's no time limit. We'll just go, because you've got so much to talk about. But I want to where are you located? I never asked you.
Well, I'm right now. I'm down at our summer place in the Santa Cruz Mountains in Fulton. And I'll be down here until tomorrow, and then I head back up to the Sierra Nevadas, which is our primary home, and I'll be there until I leave for the UK.
Well. Yeah, well, there you are. You're the citizen of the world. There you are. So yeah, and you are. You have traveled so much, and we're going to be talking about that. But back in 1990, you had an NDE and a near-death experience. For those who don't know what that is, and that's quite an experience. I have never had one, nor have I astral projected. So I don't know. I don't know if they're that similar, but certainly, what happened during that NDE, because it really changed things for you.
Was just sort of a low point for me, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
I had a very difficult life, which of course I chose before I came into this incarnation.
Yep.
But I was yet to understand that. And I didn't understand that until after the NDE took place, or during the time that the NDE took place.
Mm-hmm.
But at that point in my life, I had actually astral projected before that. But
okay.
And I had done a number of things. I was able to do out-of-body experiences and things when I was a child as well, and all the way up into my 20s. And somewhere along the line, that kind of subsided. So when I was 33, and that was a key number,
Mm-hmm.
when I was 11,
What's a master number?
Into forming, starting the foundation for my life when I was 11. My parents divorced, and my mother was not well, and so it sent me off into my life basically at 11. 22, I was doing country western music promotion with some people, and and Willie Nelson at that point came to me. We had this conversation. We were promoting his show.
Oh wow, what a great guy!
Right.
Yeah, so
Okay.
you were working with Willie Nelson.
Yeah. Well, actually, I wasn't working with Willie Nelson. I was working with a couple of people, and we had created a country western promotion company. And my boyfriend at the time was a bodyguard for Waylon Jennings, and so we were promoting shows for country western music singers at that point. And we happened to have been on a tour. It was my 22nd birthday.
Oh.
And we were on a tour with them, and we were in Nevada at Harrah's. And he just took me aside and said, "Hey, what are you doing with your life?" And basically, we had this long conversation. At the end of that conversation, I was convinced that I needed to, make some changes in my life. So I did. it was a pivotal moment. But all these things, the first one happened at 11. The second time I had this sort of change of course was when I was 22. And then when I was 33, the most significant change happened after an NDE.
All master numbered years. Amazing.
Yeah.
So, 33.
Right. These numbers coincide with my highest numerological numbers in, the study of numerology.
Okay, so you're a master number.
Yeah. Wow. So anyway, so here we are, from 22 to 33, things were better, but still really tough. And I just wasn't going anywhere with my life. I'd start and stop. I moved numerous times. My first husband was murdered by this point. He had been murdered a few years before that. So I had 3 little kids. Well, not all little. My oldest was a teenager at this point.
Yeah.
And I had a 9-year-old and a 2-year-old. And so things were just, they were rough. I moved up to the Nevada foothills and things didn't get any easier. And it was because of I was in my way. I was in my own way all the time, basically, but I didn't see that.
No.
So
understand.
So when I had that NDE, it just completely shifted my whole conscious awareness from victim mode to I am responsible for my own destiny, basically. I have a destiny set, a path that I can follow, but I'm responsible for the choices that I make. And so that's basically what happened. And I saw in the near-death experience, I saw a different world. I saw what I thought to be a future for mankind. And it was very beautiful. Wow. And I wanted to participate in bringing that about. And so I agreed to come back. And so I came back and I instantly, immediately I stopped drinking. I stopped taking any kind of recreational drugs. I quit smoking. All of that just vanished out of my life. And I focused on my education. I was reading everything, all esoteric stuff I could get my hands on, the backgrounds of religions. I read the Bible like 400 times. I studied quantum physics. I studied nuclear physics. I studied biology. I studied everything that, I just was, I don't know.
Well, my guess is that was all downloaded into you and you were just retrieving it.
Yes.
You you already knew this, but it's like you were drawn. I don't know. I'm just guessing, but that's what it feels like to me.
Yeah, it was a wake up call, and it was like a preview. I really needed to review all this information and get it, into my psyche, into my consciousness. So, when I finished this sort of obsessive research. Several years later, in 2015, I had over 5,000 books in my library that I had read. So that'll kind of give you an idea of what I went through during that period. So,
that's why you're Dr. Kathleen Ball.
So simultaneously, I was also, getting degrees. I was also going to college, and I was getting degrees in counseling and art therapy, and I'm studying archaeology, and I ended up getting a PhD in metaphysical sciences, which was the last one. And that was sort of a culmination of all of this research that I had been doing all those years. So, that really is my focus, and that in ancient history, of course, which is the solid proof or evidence of, all the history that we have experienced collectively as a human species, for these physical evidence to corroborate with what our theories are, is basically how we do it.
Well, we have our theories, but really, and I had I had the privilege of speaking with Graham Hancock years ago when I had a cable TV show. He was in Toronto. We did a 2-hour thing, but you know what? It goes back way farther than we can perceive, because we're really only on the precipice of a new time in our Earth's history, and we're just waking up now a little bit from the dormancy that happened after, because we go through so many things, so many times, and we
Right.
and different consciousnesses and everything, and that's the thing. And with mission as well, our soul mission, that's really important to talk about as well, because when we come in here, we come in with all of whatever we've been. I mean, not just in our last lifetime, but millennia of lifetime. So,
Yeah.
so my question is, because you were drawn to all this, because I will tell you, at the age of 10, I wanted to be an archaeologist and studying all kinds of ancient things, relations, and everything. It's almost as if like people are being drawn to these things now to look deeper, into all of this. So something is stirring on the planet.
Absolutely.
There's something going on,
Absolutely. Yeah, we are birthing a higher consciousness that is about to take place on this planet. And although if you look at the news, you see all this chaos and division, et cetera, but that is really just the birth pangs of what we are collectively creating.
I do so agree.
Yeah, and there's enough people on this planet now who have achieved higher consciousness through NDEs or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
Awareness when they were birthed, whatever it happens to be. But there's enough people now that are collectively working for this that I really believe it's going to happen. And I think it's going to happen possibly within our lifetime, yours and mine.
I actually agree with you there. I really, really do, because, I mean, full disclosure, and that's a key word, but I am also a contactee, from very little, my mom and, I suspect my kids, but they don't want to talk about it. So we don't go there. But yeah, it's things are changing. What do you think? I mean, we're going to get into all of the things with the Templars, because that is very key as well. That, I believe, is also what's happening with what you're doing with the Templars is pivotal as well, because there's something. Once you find the answer that was hidden for so long, it's going to propel us. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
And from what I understand, from my friends that I have several Templar friends.
Yeah, I saw that.
They do have knowledge of the whereabouts of 8 of the Arks of the Covenant. They are still searching for the remaining 2.
Okay.
There was more than one.
I didn't know that.
The last one that was used by Akhenaten, I believe Akhenaten had the Ark of the Covenant, and he also had the staff and several of those things.
Mm-hmm.
And my personal belief, and many people agree with me, many people don't, of course, but
that's life.
it's that Akhenaten gave the last Ark of the Covenant to Moses. And he also gave him the staff as he was dying. And the Pharaoh's men that were supposedly chasing, did chase Moses, were the opposing priesthood that was trying to come back in and take over when Akhenaten died. These were the people that he replaced when he created Amarna, which was a completely separate area of worship, and the temple, the whole system was based on one God. And he wanted to see that continue. So he gave it to Moses and the Jews and told them to get out of here before these people came in and were able to take these relics. And you don't know, we don't hear about the Ark of the Covenant until Moses.
Yeah, and I know, and I understand that these are magical. That the arks, it's a device. It's am I right? Because I understand this was something the Egyptians created.
Well, I'm
these
not sure
arcs,
that the Egyptians created them.
I'm
I
just saying,
personally
or it
suspect,
could have been, yeah. What do you
yeah, I
think?
suspect that they go all the way back to Atlantis. Actually, I
Okay,
think these devices yeah, they were actually invented and created during the time of Atlantis. Personally,
okay, but I know they sort of came through Egypt. That's why I'm just wondering because I know that the Ark of the Covenant is not the only ark, and that that arks were not, they weren't commonplace, but they certainly were known about. Now you have a connection to Atlantis and Lemuria, I understand. Like you,
yes, I do. Yeah.
can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, I have vivid memories of both Lemuria and Atlantis, and unfortunately, I was there in Atlantis during the dark times. I don't recall any other but one lifetime
Mm,
there, and it was not pleasant. It was during the time of the fall of Atlantis, and there was a lot of corruption going on at that point, and people were leaving. They were trying to get out of Atlantis to recreate what they had already, what they had created there as it
yeah.
was sinking, and it was not pretty. During Lemuria, it was a completely different time, and I had several lifetimes as a Lemurian. Lemuria was a completely, totally different concept.
Mm,
The Atlantis was based on mental abilities, whereas Lemuria was more of an all-encompassing, total experience. We were one with nature. We actually understood the everything about a tree or a bird or a star or another
yeah.
planet. It was intrinsically part of us, and we understood that.
Like
And so there was a communion of all of this. It was all one. And that's why we had an interdependent relationship with the planet. Now, Atlantis moved into the mental. Now, remember, this is an evolutionary process.
Yeah.
So it's
Because
not like
Lemuria,
anything
yeah.
right. It's not like anything's right or wrong.
No,
It's
no.
just a process of maturing spiritually through an evolutionary process.
Hmm.
So after Lemuria, after the fall of Lemuria, and Lemuria was still in existence during the beginning of Atlantean years.
Yeah.
So one didn't just stop and another start.
No, they
They
transitioned. Yeah.
every one of these ages have overlaps.
Hmm.
But Lemuria was really considered the paradise, the golden, the golden era, and it
Yeah.
lasted all the way up through the early Egyptian years. This golden era, golden time, what they refer to as a golden era.
Hmm.
However, that mental division, I guess you could call that, they had this opposing idealism that they had with the Lemurians. They wanted to control everything outside of them. They wanted to build things. They were beginning to become in love with their ability to create mentally.
Yeah.
And this is all ego, of course. And so that, if you want to look at it, we're doing that again today. We have this polarization
Yeah, for
of
sure.
people, and it's happening again. We're right here again. Here we are again.
Yeah.
That,
I mean, oh, sorry. When you talk about mental abilities, a lot of people look at Göbekli Tepe or the pyramids, and they say how are these constructed, and a lot
right.
believe that they were lifted telekinetically, whatever, I don't know, but certainly they weren't rolled on logs up steep angles to produce these amazing edifices.
They were able to manipulate the elements.
Mm-hmm.
During Lemurian times, that was something that was just part of their natural ability, that nobody even thought twice about it. But they were able to manipulate their the elements around them, their environment. They were able to, I believe that they actually were able to melt these rocks, because you see them especially like in up in Machu Picchu in Peru and in Egypt, you see these huge,
and they're so close, they look fused, right?
megalithic stones, and you can't even fit a hair. You can't even fit a air in between them. They appear to have been poured right next to each other. That the rock itself was softened in some way.
Yeah, and it's fused like a glue. Yeah.
Well, I don't think it was really
not glue, but you know what I mean, like molten rock, and then it hardened maybe or something like that.
I think that they just had the ability to make it malleable.
Yeah.
And softened it enough, and possibly even they were in molds of some sort. I don't know. I mean, I see these knobs on all a lot of the rocks all through Peru and Egypt and several other places in the world. They just found some in India. But these were used when I'm a sculptor. I was a sculptor for 35 years.
Right.
I use these keys in the mold making process. So that tells me that there may have been some mold making as a technique to pour these huge boulders, megalithic stones into some type of mold. And that's why they fit so closely. I mean, I don't know, but that's my personal take on it. And I think that they use sound and telekinetic powers of the mind to be able to do these things. And there's still remnants of the tales of these sorts of things in Tibet. Many, many years ago, I read these 5 little books. It was the Teachings of the Masters of the Far East. And in the first one, in these little tiny red books, but in the first one, it was, the whole book talks about the things and the abilities that the Tibetan masters had.
Yeah.
And they were able to project their physical body into, thousands of miles away. They were able to go into a sleep state and not deteriorate their body. They were able to use sound to move these humongous stones and rocks to build their temples up in the Himalayas. They had, many, many abilities that I believe we just forgot.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah. So they had these abilities. I have a Tibetan doctor, and and the Tibetan medicine is amazing. It's thousands of years old, and from what they remember, but yeah, it's phenomenal. We have forgotten. We've forgotten it.
Well, I believe that we still carry the memory within our DNA.
Oh,
and
definitely.
I believe that this is resurfacing, that the energies that are coming into the planet right now are assisting in awakening this memory that's carried within our DNA.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that potentially we have the ability to remember everything from the very beginning of physical manifestation within our own bodies. I believe that is our covenant between the other dimensional realities and this dimensional, 3-dimensional reality is right in our DNA.
Oh,
so,
and now that they've mapped the DNA, I think that's really important because, physically, the physical stuff they're taking a look at, but I'm very, very sure that they're going to start going beyond that in our DNA.
Of course.
Because they're going to recognize other strands in there or something. I don't know. I have no idea, but I'm just guessing. There's something's going to come out of that. Yeah.
I think and again, it's going to be used for both good and not so good.
Yeah, well, that's the way of the world, isn't it? Really, but we gotta spread light. That's the point, and just one little speck of light can light a whole room up. So got to keep doing that. And it's not easy. It's not easy to like everyone. It's not easy to be that light. But just by doing what we're doing tonight is really important because people will hear it, and that's important. So So I was thinking of now the Templars. The Templars, they were from Portugal, right?
Well, they weren't from Portugal. What my research has uncovered is that many of them, their families at least, they were all descendants of another order of knights. Not all of them, but a few of the families were descendants of an order of knights that was organized by Zerubbabel in 600 BC during the time of the building of the second temple. And I believe that this is why they had this oral knowledge of where to go in the Holy Land when they arrived. They went right straight to the above the Temple Mount.
Yeah.
And, you know, they went right straight there. They could have stayed in the castle, but they didn't. They chose to stay in the stables instead above the Temple Mount. And where there's evidence, we have evidence now that they were excavating underneath the Temple Mount in the tunnels. So we know that they were down there, and whatever they retrieved from there, I believe, is something that, you know, that they had full knowledge of as a result of their ancestry.
Interesting. Yeah, and you know, there so much is around Jerusalem. You know,
Yes.
it's like it's a point of entry. I don't know why I'm saying that, but it just feels like that. You know, it's like the navel of the world. I don't know. It's just there's something about it. You know,
It's a very important, it's a very important portal, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, we have not even been allowed to get in and excavate because of this religious belief and that religious belief, et cetera.
Yeah.
But I think in the near future that we will be able to expose all of the truths. We'll be able to bring them all to light. And I think that the revelations are going to be so eye-opening that it will awaken people's, you know, it's just going to awaken the whole world, I believe, because you know these religions have they've worked for good, of course, to some degree, but they also don't allow truths to surface because they don't want to be challenged. And so, I mean, look at the Catholic Church; they have a Vatican full of artifacts and evidence of things that, you know, that history has said, well, this and this happened, and they have proof, they have evidence that they have been withholding within the Vatican for hundreds of years.
And also the Library of Alexandria, I believe there's a lot from there in the Vatican. I understand, and like we were talking just before the program started, we're talking about, you know, the artifacts that were taken from the Second Temple, you know, by the Romans. I believe that the candelabra, all of that stuff is in the Vatican. Has to be. Where else would it be? And why do they have Swiss guards?
I agree that, you know, anything that was taken by the Romans from the destruction of the Second Temple, I do believe it is in the Vatican today. Now, the Templars, what the Templars' purpose, with very little, you know, it's not well known.
Yeah.
But what I believe from my research is that the Templars were gathering esoteric knowledge and wisdom. They were in Istanbul, which at that time was Constantinople.
Yes.
They were in the Holy Land. They were in Egypt. They were in India. They were all over the world gathering esoteric knowledge. And they were bringing it back to Portugal. And Portugal was the Holy Grail, basically, in terms of diversity, you know, equality. It was the only country in all of Europe during that time frame, during the Middle Ages, that the church did not have control of. The Templars took in the Cathars, they took in the Jews. All the
I'm getting tingles while you're talking about that. I'm just absolutely yes. Yeah.
Right. And I believe that what they were hoping for, what their agenda, my next book that'll be coming out next year is the Templar agenda. And I talk specifically about this, that their agenda was to bring about a period of enlightenment in Europe to counteract this medieval belief system that was perpetuated by the church.
Yeah, well, the Cathars were decimated.
Yeah. And I also believe that they were populating other countries with their members after 1307, you know, when they were persecuted.
Yeah.
I believe that that they had a strategy, and they went to other countries, including Brazil, where I found that cave.
Talking about the Templars, not the Cathars, yeah.
And they were populating these areas with their members for a future time, which is now.
Wow. You know what? I do play music on this program, and I want to play a song right now. It's called Fly. It's by a friend of mine, Chris Burkett. He's a producer, and he produced Sinead O'Connor and the Pogues and all that kind of thing. But he's also an amazing singer-songwriter, and he wrote this about the Cathars. And I want you to hear this song. It's called Fly. I think
Okay.
you're gonna love it. And then we're gonna come back and continue talking because it's a good time to have a little break with the music, and then we'll come back and continue talking about this because this is fascinating. Because yes, the Templars and and they were like them and the Basques and the Vikings. They all traveled way before Christopher Columbus. So we'll talk about that.
Oh, yeah, we did.
Yes.
And what many don't know is in Montsegur, before the Cathars were murdered by the church, many thousands of Templars escaped with the assistance of the Templars, and they were brought into Portugal and given lands. And I found just a lot of evidence of where they lived and how much land they were protected by the survivors. They were protected by the Templars there in Portugal.
Wow. Well, here it is. This is Fly. I know you're going to love this. It's close your eyes, and this is beautiful.
What I'm trying to say is make a new direction. Who said nothing changes underneath the heavens? Turn on the light. The age of darkness, those old ideas, and maybe we can learn to fly, and maybe I believe in light. Every color falling from the sky, shine on one another. Turn on the light. The age of darkness is over now. Those old ideas are gonna drag you down, and maybe we can learn to fly, and maybe we can fly together, and maybe we can learn to fly.
Burkett Fly featuring David Hikes, who's toning there, Kathleen. So what'd you think?
That was really beautiful.
Isn't that gorgeous? Just what we're talking about. Chris Burkett's a very special person as well. He's on the same page as us.
Can you send me a link to that?
I'll send you the MP3. I'll send it to you.
Okay, great. Awesome. That would be wonderful.
Absolutely. And he'd be honored for you to have it. I know that.
Oh, that would be wonderful. Yeah, I'd love to just have that just to listen to.
Oh yeah, it's beautiful. And the toning, David Hikes, amazing. So so the Cathars some of them did manage to go to Portugal, and the Templars protected them, and they protected the Jews. They when you know the truth, there's no more competition. Not well. This you know what I mean. There's aces in their places. Everybody has a place.
Yes.
Yeah.
And not only did they take in the Cathars, the Jews, the Druids, Celts, the leftover Celts that were remnants after the Roman Moors.
All the hermits.
They also took in Islam and the Moors.
Yeah.
And even though they went in and conquered Islam and the Moors to get that territory of Portugal, which later became Portugal,
right.
At the time, it's just the Iberian Peninsula. It was a lot of indigenous cultures that were there.
Oh, yeah.
Amongst them were the Moors and Islam. But they invited them to come and gave them land. And so encouraged all of these people to become a culture of harmony and equality and acceptance. And so this was unheard of in Europe during the Middle Ages. And the church didn't like it. They wanted to dismantle the Templars. They wanted to get rid of the Templars. After they outlived their use as military, as a military order in the Holy Land, and after they lost Jerusalem the last time, and what was it, 1292, I believe. Mm-hmm. Then, as far as the church was concerned and the monarchies in Europe, they had outlived their usefulness. And now most of the monarchs were in debt to the Catholic Church and to the monarchs were all in debt to the Templars. They all owed them lots and lots of money. So there was a lot of inspiration on their part, motive to get rid of the Templars and get rid of those debts. And also the Templars had a tremendous amount of power and respect amongst just the citizens of Europe. They had developed the first banking system, and it was not based on usury, as many people don't understand. The banking system we have today is nothing like it. Does not even resemble what the Templars had created.
Yeah, and as far as the usury is concerned, that was something that was I'm Jewish, so it's like poor Jews are always put upon. We're always blamed for the banking system, but we were forced into having to do that because we weren't allowed to do anything else. Be part of guild. Right. So that happened to be the mode at the time, the way it was done. It wasn't our idea. It was like, that's just how it was done, but yes. How did the Templars bank? That would be interesting to know. Do you know?
How did they what?
Bank. Like how they do banking.
So what their banking system was, they created a coin that was not silver, gold, or any of these things. It was just a type of tin. It was a very, not a valuable coin.
Right.
And they also had notes. And what someone would do is put gold or whatever their valuables were in one of the Templar commanderies, preceptories in Europe, whatever country they lived in, on this end. Yeah. And then they would carry a note and sometimes some of these coins with them to the Holy Land. And in the Holy Land, their Templar brothers that were there would say, okay, they would present this note or whatever it was to them, and they would be able to retrieve funds there once they got there. And this was primarily
what a great idea.
It's very dangerous traveling.
I was going to say, because if you're traveling with a bag of gold or case of chests of gold, that's dangerous.
Set up as a service. This was initially set up as a service to people. and later was extended to the monarchies and to the church to borrow money for whatever their purposes were. And, with the understanding that they would pay the money back, which they didn't, but oftentimes they did not. So that was the essence of the banking system. And I have a great deal of research regarding that.
No, that's fascinating. So let's come to present day. And Dr. Kathleen Ball how did you discover a cave in Brazil that is a Templar cave?
Well, it was through a series of synchronicities. Actually, I had no intention of discovering anything when I was there in Brazil on that particular, during 2015. I really had no intention. This was in the beginning of September. My girlfriend and I had a liver disease. I had liver cancer for 4 years at this point. Yeah. And I went over there because my girlfriend convinced me to go see John of God, right? So I finally agreed, and I thought, well, worst case scenario, I'll get a great vacation out of it.
There you go.
So I went over there, and John of God was not available. So she says, there's this beautiful area, about 3 hours outside the other direction, outside of Brasilia. And they've got waterfalls and all this just beautiful area called the Chapada. So we made reservations in Cavalcanti, and we headed up there. However, when she rented the car, I couldn't rent it because I didn't bring my driver's license. I had forgotten my driver's license.
Right.
So she rented the car, but she didn't know how to drive a car with a clutch.
Oh.
So on the way up to Cavalcanti, she burned up 2 clutches.
Cheer.
Each time, the rental car company had to come and replace the car. The last time of which they replaced it with an automatic finally.
Good.
So we arrived in the Chapada really, really late, and she didn't want to drive the extra time to go into Cavalcanti because it was really dark, and she didn't want to drive in the dark. So we pulled out, a map, and we looked at the area that we were in, and the closest town to us was a little town called Moinho, and the other closest town was a town called Alto Paraiso, which meant high paradise. And I told her, that's the one. And I didn't know why I was saying that. I had no idea, but I just knew that we needed to go there.
It felt right.
So we went there, and we were able to rent a pousada, which is a motel, immediately. We were able to get that. This was like late at night.
Right.
We pulled in, we, got into our little pousada. The next day we got up, I went into town. I hooked up with, some local people, and the only English speaking person in town at that time. Anyway, and I was able to find out where these waterfalls were. And also I was able to find out where this is really interesting too.
Yeah.
Groups of people were coming into Brazil, and they were buying 5,000 and 10,000 acres, groups of people together. And they were turning them into what I experienced when I went to one of these places was a neo-Lemuria. I mean, the energy was just unimaginable. It was just unimaginable. And these are popping up all over the world, by the way. Oh. But anyway, so that happened. And then I came back down the mountain, and my girlfriend Adele and I decided to just go out and just see as many waterfalls as we could. Well, that's not easy because you're hiking several kilometers to each one of them.
Well, yeah, in Brazil, it's rather...
We had to choose one. And we were looking at the different ones, and I said, agua fria. That means cold water.
Yeah.
Why don't we choose that one? And let's try that one. And again, this is just an intuitive feeling of that I wanted to go there. So we went there, and when we came up, the owner of which we had called a camping pousada, which is where this waterfall is located on, invited us to lunch. And he told us about an adjacent piece of property that had all these crystals on it. And it had this crystal vein that was going through the center of the property. And it was like a meter high by about a meter in width. And it ran probably 2 to 3 kilometers through the middle of this property.
Holy.
So he asked us if we wanted to go over there and collect some crystals and see this. And I said, yeah, of course we do.
Yeah.
Who's going to say no to crystals?
No, right? Especially a vein like that. That's amazing.
Right. So we went over there. We met with this young man, and we went down. Sure enough, we picked up thousands. There were thousands and thousands of crystals.
Oh, that's
And
beautiful.
we picked up some of the nicest ones that we found.
Well,
and
Brazil.
Huh?
Brazil.
Yes,
They make all those
Brazil.
beautiful birds and everything out of gemstones, and
Yeah.
it's amazing. And in Colombia too. I think it's in Colombia as well. But yeah, they have the most beautiful gemstones down there. So
They're amazing.
that's
it's
amazing. Yeah.
And I also found out that Brazil is one of the locations where there's what they call Lemurian crystals.
Oh.
So this was later that I found this out. So
Right.
so anyway, we're picking up these crystals, and we see this huge vein, and it's amazing. But it's also very, very hot on this particular day. And we have just hiked 5 kilometers straight down a mountainside in the middle of nowhere, a lot of vegetation and rock, and it was very difficult terrain. So the guide says to us, we're sweating. I mean, we're sweating profusely at this point.
Right.
And he says, would you like to go into this little cave over here and cool off before we head back up the mountain? Well, that was another 1.5 kilometers to get to it. But we said, yeah. So we follow him down to this cave, and he lifts up the bushes in front of the cave. And I kid you not, I mean, I just stopped dead in my tracks. And I just said, what is a Knights Templar cross doing in the middle of Brazil? He rattled up a bunch of stuff in broken English and Portuguese, because that's the language they speak there.
Right. Yeah.
And I didn't really understand any of it, but I taped it. I video taped him.
Mhm.
And I went into the cave. Of course, I'm drawn into the cave,
Well, for sure.
not knowing that, when my girlfriend handed me the flashlight, that I'm surrounded. I've got spiders crawling up my legs
Oh.
and bats are all over the place.
Oh.
Anyway, so I got out of there pretty quick. But before I did, I was able to photograph some of the graffiti on the walls. And later, I realized that there were some Templar crosses that I had seen, and they were identical to what I had seen in Dome, France in 2009. So now I know this is a Templar cave, but I don't know the purpose, and I don't know anything more about it. So now I'm just, filled with questions. I've got more questions than answers at this point. I have the slightest idea what they were doing there at this point. And this was in 2015. So fast forward 9 days later, I come home and my house burns to the ground, along with my entire career. I was an art professor at that point.
Oh.
All curriculum, everything is gone. Boom, gone. And what
That's
what
awful.
transpired was not a healing. And so I had to have a liver transplant about 6.5 weeks after that. So here we go again. Another complete change took place in my life.
Kidding.
My life was completely propelled in another direction. I had to recreate a career. I had to decide what I was going to do. I had a year of recuperation from this liver transplant to decide what I was going to do. And I decided to bring this truth to the world. I decided to do a documentary and let people know about this Templar cave in Brazil, and do background research, and find out why it was there, why they carved it out in the middle of nowhere, what were they doing in Brazil, and when. And so I have answered all those questions now. And, all these years later, after many, many trips to Portugal, to Scotland, to, all these different places.
Scotland too.
And then my return to Brazil too, numerous occasions. I found out that the cave was a gold mine.
Oh.
And that, they were taking the gold back and forth to the kings in Portugal. And that
Makes
they had been
sense.
traveling possibly as early as the late 1100s. Definitely in the 13th century, they were definitely traveling over there. And they had plenty of gold for King Dinis, when all the rest of the monarchs were broke after the Crusades. After the fall of Jerusalem, when all the rest of the monarchs were completely broke, King Dinis was not broke. And why was that? Because the Templars were bringing him gold and silver from South America.
And of course, at that time, there weren't too many people on the seas.
No.
There was nobody really. They would have
There was
been.
nobody.
They pretty much
They were
had
the
carte
first
blanche.
navigators. Yeah, they were the first navigators after you know, after the cataclysms had taken place,
Sure.
you know, they were the first navigators after a lot of the destruction that happened around the world that preceded the medieval times. You know, they were the only ones. They were the only shipbuilders. They were the first navy that was created was Portuguese. And, you know, since then I have discovered where the port was that they left from. And the fact they had it established as a secret naval base, and that they were traveling not only to South America, but they were traveling to other countries as well.
No doubt. And, you know, I was thinking, you know, when you talked about like why we're there in the middle of nowhere, but the middle of nowhere wasn't always the middle of nowhere. We know that Egypt was green, and there's lots of things under the sand, or in the jungles. You know, when they found Angkor Wat, you know, in the jungle, and how advanced that whole that whole civilization was, and the same, you know, all over the planet. The planet has shifted. It changes its geography, its weather patterns, everything. I understand we're probably, you know, coming up to maybe another magnetic pole shift. You know, I mean, all that stuff happens, and things shift and change, and so it was probably not such a remote area where that cave was at the time.
I do believe that it probably was. I don't think
so?
700 years were really making
not that much of a difference. No, but people
they brought with them the seeds to create a paradise. Again, Alto Paraiso, high paradise. They recreated what they had seen in the Holy Land. I mean, there's pineapples and mangoes and banana trees, and I mean, huge avocados. Just what they created there it's just out in the middle of nowhere, but it's a paradise nonetheless. And it's funny to me, what I find very coincidental or synchronistic is the fact that when you go to Alto Paraiso, there you walk down the street, the main street of Alto Paraiso, and you're going to run into someone from Germany, India, Russia, China, everywhere.
Yeah.
It's the same. It's almost like a recreation of what they had in Portugal. And I don't know if they somehow instigated this or inspired it or how this developed, but I find it very coincidental to what they had created in Portugal, and that they were the founders of this area, obviously. And I believe they set the precedent. They certainly populated it with people of this mindset, and they certainly planted the vegetation to create this paradise. And I mean, it's really, you go to the farmers markets there, and think they're on Mondays or Tuesdays and Sundays, and you're going to find you're going to find everything you find in Egypt at the farmers markets, just about, except the spice. You don't see those spices, but you will see the fruits and vegetables. And it's really, I almost bought a house there. You know?
You may still, you know, the way things are on the planet, you know, it's hard. I mean, I live in Toronto, and I have to say, I was talking to Geoffrey Clarfield last night. He's my guest, the ethnomusicologist, anthropologist, you know, and he, of course, we were talking about the multicultural flavor of Toronto. Toronto is really quite unique on the planet for that, you know, that we have this incredible mosaic of people here. Like you said, you walk down the street and you'll see all kinds of people from different places and speaking different languages as you walk down the street, and it's really quite something, you know.
I was in Toronto for an art. When I was involved in the art world, I was there for a sculpture event, and I remember going to dinner, and I had choices of every kind of food imaginable. There were restaurants of all different types. I was really impressed by that. It reminded me a lot of San Francisco.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but that's the thing. You know, we have little pockets of different cultures all over the city, and we celebrate that with street festivals and everything else. And absolutely. He was talking about the music and everything. Well, you can listen to that podcast. It was from last night, so there you go. I won't talk about it right now, but I did mention you on that podcast yesterday because the whole idea. Like I was talking to Joffrey, and he said, you know, because he's been in Ethiopia where one of the arcs is, you know. They say the priests are guarding in this church, but he said, "Well,
in Aksum. Are you talking about the one in Ethiopia in Aksum?
Yeah, Aksum. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, he's been there, you know, and he travels. Or he travels quite. He's an anthropologist, an ethnomusicologist, and he's actually a safari leader. He also takes people on safari to East Africa. He's got one going on in August for a couple of weeks.
Well, that's somebody that I would definitely like to connect with because Ethiopia, specifically Aksum, is one of the places that I want to visit.
Well, he knows it like the back of his hand. So, and he's called the Sound Traveler. And he worked with for Alan Lomax in Manhattan for 3 years, you know, studying ethnomusicology and everything. Oh, you would have a great conversation with him. He's incredible. He's
I would love to connect with him if you could send me his contact information.
Oh, yes. No problem. Well, he said, does she know where the treasure is? And we talked a little bit about that too before. And I said, you find the ark and she'll find the treasure.
Right. It's funny you mentioned that because a lot of people think I'm going to find the treasure because of the way I've sort of been divinely guided to these, to that and other things in my life.
You never know.
Honestly, it doesn't really matter to me because if I discover it, it's going to the Templars because I believe in their agenda.
Oh no, absolutely. But I think that's going to culminate. That's going to happen at some point somehow. It's like everything, you know, where the Ark will be found, where the Templar treasure will be found, and what is the treasure? You know that song, One Tin Soldier.
Well, you know
where they said the treasure on the hill was peace on earth was all it said. You know, that was the treasure. You know, so it wasn't really money. It was just peace on earth. You know,
peace.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah,
and I believe that whatever it entails, it involves peace on earth and a means for us to achieve peace on earth.
Exactly.
That's what I believe that the contents really are.
Wonderful having you on, Kathleen, and we look forward to your YouTube channel is called.
I totally enjoyed the chat.
Oh,
totally.
Me too. What's your YouTube channel called? Is it under?
It's Kathleen Ball, or the Templars in Brazil. I think we started another one, the Templars in Brazil. I'll have that information posted on my website. You'll be able to find it all on my website.
Yeah, and I will also put it in the description box so all of our listeners can go there and watch this wonderful video you're going to be making tomorrow. I'm looking forward to looking at that. So this is Jason Davis. He's a wonderful singer-songwriter. So this love will light your way. And thank you again for joining me, Dr. Kathleen Ball. Marvelous soul. Just wonderful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I see you lost in the darkness, and you can't find your way. Your heart is broken, and you've lost all your faith. But sooner or later, love will light your way. And you've given up on hope, and you can't seem to breathe. And your world's crashing down on you, trying to wash you away. And your world's gone black, and there's no color anymore. And you're out there drifting 1,000,000 miles from shore. shipwrecked heart. It's gone adrift in the night. And all the stars meant to sold you. There's no rescue in sight. But sooner or later, love comes in colors, so many shades. It'll cast away your darkness. It'll cast away your pain. Love will light your way. There's no darkness, it's just the absence of light. In your heart, it's a candle. Let it illuminate your life. 'Cause sooner or later, love will light your way, light your way. This love comes in colors, with so many shades. It'll cast away your darkness. It'll cast away your pain. This love comes in colors, with so many shades. It'll cast away your darkness. It'll cast away your pain. Love will light your way. Love will light your way. Love will light your way. Light your way. Light your way. Light your way. Light your way.
You are listening to The Joyce Aldrich Show from Toronto, Canada. Paranormal and UFO edition. Yes, we call them UFOs.
Starlight, starbright, first star I see tonight might be Venus or some unknown light, hovering a bit too low tonight. Starlight and streetlights and weather balloons, or something strange out of a five-star cartoon.